hello. We're not saying aloha anymore because we're not on Maui.
No.
We're standing here in Malibu, California. Take a look at this beautiful coast. You know, Malibu was a place that was pretty hard hit a couple years ago, and the Pacific Palisades are just over there by the fires. And when we were in Maui, we also visited Lahaina. So, you know, being here right now is an interesting thing because we're picking up on many different layers of this city of 20 million people. But, you know, they call it the City of Angels for a reason. And because of those angelic frequencies, not just the angelic frequencies, there's another current that Amber found today that made a lot of sense when we were going through Santa Monica. So I just want you to maybe share with people what you found and received in that transmission.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because, you know, this all started in Maui, and it was connected into why there's certain locations receiving or being targeted with these fires, but also this other frequency around women and their womb and these curses that we're seeing collectively placed upon feminines. And so when I was walking today through Santa Monica, I started to receive this vision of this almost kind of looked like a medicine man or a medicine woman. And what I started to receive was that California or LA has very healing waters underneath the ground. And in ancient times, and I wasn't able to really pinpoint how ancient, but there was these sort of ancient healing ceremonies done with the water. And somewhere along the lines, we're still pulling this story together fully, there was this sort of eternal damnation curse placed over the land. And so, you know, these people that come here are like eternally seeking this, like the what's it called? The youth?
Fountain of Youth.
Fountain of Youth, yeah.
Which
the Fountain of Youth.
Of course, a 16th century Spanish myth, the conquistadors in the New World. And they were in California, and that's where they found, apparently, the Fountains of Youth. I mean, there's also, you know, references to South America as well. But this idea of the Fountain of Youth, or this spring where the Divine Mother in the land is just pumping forth these currents, right? And of course, the overlays, they want to come in and they want to take that. They want to own it. So it's only available to a select few. And so what she's talking about here is sort of the way that that's been distorted.
Yes.
You know, and if you think about LA, what do you think about? You think about, you know, too many cosmetics, Botox, expensive anti-aging protocols, obsession with fitness. You know, there's an obsession that happens in this distortion with trying to be young forever. I mean, you look at Hollywood, you look at some of these actresses, you know, like Joan Rivers, for instance, 70 years old, you know, looks like she's, you know, 48-year-old lizard, basically, with all the plastic surgery. And I'm not here to insult anyone that's done that, but you can see that's not a natural way to connect with those currents here.
No.
That's a way to kind of sequester them and use them in exchange for privilege and money to gain access to a really dumbed down version of those land currents that Amber was referencing.
Yeah, and so, you know, what we're seeing here is that what, you know, with all of this is that this eternal youth fountain is not something that we find outside of ourselves with toxins and chemicals and like constantly spending money on these biohacking sort of things. It's like it's all within the womb. Whether you're a man or a woman, we could call that then the sacral. It's activating those pleasure currents and clearing those overlays of the curses and the trauma and the ways that we've been frozen. And that freezing, it really starts to like contract everything within you, and you're not circulating this life force energy. Your life force energy starts to feel more drained from you, and this has been my experience. I'm just like chronically always tired. Yeah. And I'm going through these these healings with the land and everything that we're doing, and I know that this isn't just me, it's all of women too. And so some of these curses we see, some of them have been quite deep. Yeah.
You know, 2 weeks ago when we were in Maui and we were doing all the grid work around Hana and really tapping into the land energies, I noticed my sacral energy, my reproductive organs started to be like working like that of an 18-year-old again. You know, just in my own virility as a man. And it's very interesting because I know a lot of men, especially when they hit their 40s, they struggle with these things: low energy, low drive to do anything, brain fog, you know, and then they go on this whole like, you know, downloading apps and tracking and supplementation and all this stuff just to try to feel that drive of testosterone in their system again. When really, they just need to connect with the purity of those currents in the land. You know, I do a lot of Qigong where I'm working with my own sacral energy, and you know, it's creative life force energy or sexual energy, and I'm working with the land. You know, just simple things like right now, I've got a flow going on here where maybe Amber, you can kind of tilt the camera down and you can just show, you know, I'm moving that energy down, and I'm doing this with my breath. There we go. That's awesome. Thank you. And just like that, and I'm just rooting in and coming into silence. That's as easy as it gets. Would you rather do this for 10 minutes or spend $5,000 a month on like fancy supplementation practices that, you know, come with side effects often? And this leads to more joy, more pleasure, more connection, more love, more closeness with those you care about in your life, with the land. You know, I feel deeply connected with the land, and as a result of this, I think I've been a grid worker my whole life and didn't know it. And then she, you know, when she came along, she kind of like officiated that. And now I feel like I have a deeper connection with all the places that I go. And even walking around Santa Monica, I knew, hey, I always feel good here. What is it? Well, there are those angelic frequencies. There is that fountain of life frequency in the land. And, you know, part of grid work too is starting to clear the overlays. You know, we just drove by the Pacific Palisades, and we're probably going to head back over there again, because sometimes what we're finding now, especially at these traumatized land sites, is that they've been traumatized so that the natural currents can't organically arise and sort of circulate, and they end up frozen in locks so that they can build these really distorted synthetic things like smart cities under the guise of, like, you know, low-income housing or whatever.
Yeah, so the fires are something that we're also tracking into, because it's interesting how when we were in Maui, there's this connection to the land, the womb, the sacral, but also it being targeted with fires. And then we're looking at that same pattern here in LA, and so we're seeing, okay, well, California has droughts. There's been this fire, and it kind of begs the question of, like, why?
Yeah.
Why have these specific locations been targeted? And what we're seeing is that there is a connection with, you know, this frequency of the sacral in these currents of the lands, and it's very potent. And if people were to actually be connecting in with that, with the land and within themselves, they would be full of life, full of vitality, full of love, and full of pleasure, and life wouldn't be so hard. And if life is not hard, then how can you control people?
And this shows up in people's bodies when we do multidimensional healing sessions.
Yeah.
Amber and I've experienced this myself for a long time. I had to heal it within myself, but I've been able to heal it within clients where the sacral center, which is supposed to be water, ends up with fire in it. And that fire, what does that manifest as? Well, pain is one thing. You know, having to urinate a lot is another thing. Distracted energy in women, it's things like endometriosis, dryness, lack of sensitivity,
low libido,
or on the other hand, it can be promiscuity, and it can be like an overly active wanting to disperse a buildup of any pressure, right? So what needs to happen is we need to allow the waters to rise up again and separate the fire, which actually belongs in the solar plexus, back into that part of the body. And so often what we see is these inverted currents in the human biological system that mirror what's taking place at some of these power sites around the world.
Yes.
And so as these places that have these water frequencies, and Maui's got incredible waters, life-giving waters. Same with the Fountain of Youth over there. When we see those being traumatized with fires, it's mirroring the ailments that are taking place in people's bodies.
Yeah, exactly. So we're here to work on that with the land and within ourselves and together, and you know, really begin to understand more of this specific union that we've been called into, and how that's playing a part in it, with this blueprint of how we're relating with one another, with the land, with source, in this really clean, in this really coherent, in this very pleasurable way. But of course, in saying that, it's not to say that there's not a lot of uncomfortability along the way with all of that. It's the unfreezing part. And me specifically, I've been unfreezing so many parts of myself. And I've gone through moments of anger and rage. And last week I was experiencing just mass amounts of grief. And so I know I'm getting to the bottom of this, not just for myself, but for the collective and the planet.
And as a man, I must say, she has never once projected any of that on me. And so it's allowed our relationship to exist with a great degree of trust and respect, and also knowing that she can have those big emotions and show up as authentically as she wants with me, and that I'm not going to react to her. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to react negatively. I'm just really going to hold her, and I'm going to say, do you need space? Do you want me to be with you? Do you want me to help you process this? Can I give you body work? And so in many ways, I'm just here to support her. And so she can feel supported to go through those layers and to allow herself to fully feel them. We often don't feel them if we're pressured by time, we're pressured by lack of support, the need to make money, the need to take care of children. So my role has often been, how can we get you that support so that you can have the time and space to do that feeling and that moving through and that processing.
Yeah, and as a woman, I can say, and I'm sure many other women can agree, just having that is such a profound gift.
Yeah.
Not feeling pressured or like you have to perform in any way, shape, or form. You can just be you. And I would say one of the main things that we've noticed in an alchemical union is that when two individuals come into that, there really is no projection. There's been such a high level of accountability and self-awareness that we've created within ourselves on our own even before we met, so that now when we're together, there's just no room for that. There's something between the frequency where it just rejects that even happening.
Yeah.
And it's just not even a thought in your head. So if it was ever going to be, you just go, no, like this is just me. Everything is just me. I'm just experiencing this and I need to take accountability. And so it just creates this much more clean way of relating with one another and healing, honestly, because in other unions, there's so much shadowing and mirroring taking place. And it's like you're projecting those onto each other. And really, it's like being in the hall of mirrors when you're in those karmic timelines, because you're really just going through those relationships to just gather the fragments of yourself through another. And so if we can shift our awareness into that and not like, oh, this person did this to me and da da da, it's like, no, this person taught me more about myself. Let me take that as a gift and carry on until eventually I'm getting to a specific union, which for us has been an alchemical union, which is really just, it's beautiful. It's challenging because you're not used to healthy love and what that is, but through his patience, and of course the patience within myself and within oneself, you can allow each other to get there.
There's a gift of softness that arises. And as a man, when she softens, because I've held that space or, been with her and put my hands on her and supported her body in releasing, that softness creates a field that to be in is so stabilizing for my integrity and my purpose and my sense of clarity and my sense of being. It's really like my greatest joy in many ways. And I think a lot of men know this deep within their hearts. That's how they want to show up for women, but they get so caught up in the fragility of their ego. And so for men, it's so important to just let the ego go. Back to the 4 agreements, don't take anything personally. When things are coming up, when she's telling me these things, I don't think, oh my God, I went and did this. I get, okay, grief is present. Okay, anger's present. Cool. Let's support that. Is there something that I did that you need to express right now? And I'll sit here and listen to that and hold space for it. She's extremely conscientious though. I have a huge amount of trust with her. There's going to be absolutely no emotional dumping or projection or some of the other things that men often struggle with. I've been in relationships in the past where I'm putting up with a lot of nonsense, a lot of immaturities coming up. There's none of that here. Yeah. And that's really a sign of going into this with somebody that has a lot of integrity and has a lot of their own inner work done. And so, if you're somebody that's deeply desiring a union of high integrity and two souls meeting each other at a very high level, it's look within yourself first. It doesn't take long to do the work. Sometimes it's just looking at one key piece within yourself that is holding you up, that's showing up time and time again in the way that you're relating. And for me, what it was often holding space for women that are operating from their pain most of the time and are identified with their pain, so they naturally begin to exhibit facets of the toxic feminine, the dark feminine, which I think we need to start talking about as well, because it's not talked about enough. There's a lot of stuff out there where we're really aware of the toxicity of the dark masculine and the toxic masculine, but the toxic feminine is also what's guiding that in many ways, because the signal she's putting out causes him to not know how to orient himself. So both need to be addressed.
Yeah, that dark feminine overlay, which really comes from like the dark mother overlay. It's a really big one, and I used to identify with it as much as most women out there. It really pulls you into those cycles of victimization. Like you're the victim, but you're also victimizing. And then it can see women also rising into those things of like, okay, well, women power and F men, and we don't need men. And then women are really getting into their masculine energy and writing off all men. But really, it's just, there's just this part of themselves that just feels so unseen, unheard, unsupported. And of course, things have happened to many feminines, as we have feminines in the background.
Talking about the wild feminine here.
It's valid what women have been through, but it's time for us to be taking full accountability for how we are showing up and how we're not showing up, and how we are also victimizing and being victims, and how we are also being narcissists, and how we have also had that in return. Because I really do feel like this planet, for the most part, especially North America, like the base tone is just like low-key narcissism. It's like how we're raised, and so everybody's kind of guilty of it, yet everybody's pointing the finger at everybody else. And that's part of the problem here. So I think that coming back into balance and healing that is where we come into union within ourselves, we come into union with another, and then the planet comes back into union with the planet, with everybody on the planet.
That's really where the human collective begins to shift, is when we take that self-responsibility and say, where's narcissism shown up in my own life? For a long time, I had clients that came to me as a victim. They were always a victim of circumstance, and they always said, every relationship I'm in has been with a narcissist. And after a while, I go, well, the pattern just keeps repeating. And unless you're willing to take accountability and say, you know what, I'm playing into this drama triangle of narcissist, empath, rescuer, or victim, perpetrator, rescuer, right? When we start identifying as a victim and we go, poor me for the things that are done, we're calling in narcissists. And we're also allowing that behavior because there's a part of us that has that. I certainly have had those patterns in my life, and she's admitted too. And that's okay. It isn't this blanket thing, you're a narcissist, you're a write-off, you're evil. It's like we all have those patterns, and we have goodness. Follow the most evil person around for a week. I bet you at least there'll be one instance of a true heart connection, at least with their family or with something in their life, something in their intention to create something better for themselves, to better themselves. I don't know what it is exactly, but it's often wrapped up with a lot of distortion. Yes, it can be causing a lot of harm, but no one is 100% evil.
No, and this is really just these, if you were at our safari last month, we were talking about the control patterns, being the dominator or the controller, the tyranny, or being more submissive. And all this really comes down to is this is just one big, massive collective trauma response where everybody's just trying to get their needs met and everybody's just trying to feel safe. And we will instinctively do whatever we can do to try and feel safe. And most of the time we're doing it unconsciously. So the more that we can bring that unconscious into the conscious, then we can start to take accountability and we can start to dissolve those patterns.
And speaking of safaris, we got one coming up this month. I believe it's the 19th and 20th, but the link is down below. And this one's going to focus on those powers of money, sex, relationships, and really reclaiming that power again. We're going to be doing the work on the sacral now that we removed the controller submissive dynamics last month. And if you haven't, I'm going to get those replays up soon. Again, I'll put a link below when they're ready so you can watch last month's safari. Very potent. We're going to be doing these regularly for the rest of this year. That's a message that we received. But this one's going to be especially important for anybody that's suffering from things like poverty consciousness or really has had difficulty with relationships and relating to family, relating as a parent to your children, relating in intimate relationships. This is something where I feel like we have done a lot of work, and also too, Amber's just been getting so much coming in on this that collectively we've been working on between us and amplifying and refining into deep richness. And that's the alchemy of our work.
Yes.
So yeah, hope to see you there. Like always, it's pay what you want. Replays are available because honestly, we do that because we want everybody in the world to join. Because if everybody in the world would join, we'd heal the world in like 2 hours.
Yeah, that's the intention.
Yeah. That's the intention, of course.
Yeah.
Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video and we will see you around.
Thank you. See you.
Take care.